Welcome back, and now for the news in detail. The global number of COVID-19 infections has exceeded 12 million, with the death toll crossing 549,000. The countrywide cases in the United States have crossed 3 million, with over 132,000 deaths. In the virus epicenter, Latin America, Brazil registered more than 1,200 deaths overnight. This report has the details.
The COVID-19 outbreak in Latin America is getting worse by the day, with record number of daily cases being reported in Mexico. With over 780 new deaths, the country has now overtaken Spain to register the world's 8th highest case tally. But officials insist the virus outbreak is slowing down in the country. Chile has also begun easing lockdowns in 2 southern regions, bringing some semblance of normalcy for 800,000 people. Meanwhile, in the US, despite a surge in cases, the White House wants to press ahead with some reopenings, including schools. New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy says he will sign an executive order requiring people to wear face masks outdoors.
Today, I am signing an executive order requiring the wearing of face coverings by everyone when they are in outdoor public spaces and social distancing is not practicable. This is absolutely vital when individuals find themselves in a crowded situation, such as when walking down a packed boardwalk or in a line that is not properly spaced apart.
Africa now has more than 500,000 coronavirus cases as key institutions in Ghana try to ease restrictions on business activities to salvage the country's economy. Turkey is preparing to appoint observers at weddings and engagement parties to ensure that social distancing practices are followed. China, meanwhile, has reported 9 new COVID-19 infections, all of them imported, and no new deaths. But Beijing officials warned that it is not yet the time to fully let down the guard.
Although the city's epidemic prevention and control work has achieved some promising results recently, zero new case does not mean zero risk or zero hidden danger. From infection to incidence, the symptoms of COVID-19 are complex and diverse. Some symptoms are not typical and not easy to notice, but the carrier can easily spread the virus. It is far from the time to relax our guard. We must be cautious all along and continue to carry out the epidemic prevention measures.
Meanwhile, South Korea has reported 50 new cases of the coronavirus as new clusters emerge across the country. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention say the nation's tally has risen to over 13,000 cases and 287 deaths.
Meanwhile, in Pakistan, another 61 people have died of COVID-19 in the past 24 hours, raising the toll to nearly 5,000. The Health Ministry says the infections tally has risen by over 3,000 to nearly 241,000. The ministry said over 145,000 people have recovered from the virus so far. It said there are over 90,000 active cases in the country, among which nearly 2,200 are critically ill. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Imran Khan has inaugurated Islamabad Isolation Hospital and Infectious Treatment Centre. The hospital, constructed in record 40 days, will be operational from today. The Taliban have released another 15 Afghan soldiers as part of a prisoner swap under the peace deal signed with the US in Doha. In a tweet, the group's spokesman Suhail Shaheen said the detainees were released in Ghor province. He said the released men were given some money as transportation fare. Kabul government has already freed more than 4,000 Taliban fighters, while the group has completed around 2/3 of their releases. The two sides are required to release 6,000 prisoners in total under the deal. The Saudi coalition fighting in Yemen says Houthi rebels launched a missile targeting MARIB city, which landed in a civilian area. In a statement, coalition spokesperson Colonel Turki al-Maliki said the ballistic missile was propelled from within Yemeni territory. Al-Maliki said Houthis continue to violate international humanitarian law by launching missiles and targeting civilians. He said the launch is a deliberate escalation against innocent civilians. Meanwhile, the Yemeni army claims it shot down a Houthi unmanned aerial vehicle in Hudaydah province. A military statement alleged the drone was sent by the rebels to target government forces in Ad-Durya Himi district. Tehran has denied that US forces had seized a boat carrying Iranian weapons to Houthi rebels in Yemen. Iran's foreign ministry said the charge was aimed at extending UN arms embargo on Tehran. Foreign Ministry spokesman Abbas Musawi said lying and spreading hatred are key elements of America's foreign policy. He said the US is trying to provide excuses to continue the maximum pressure on Iran. Musawi said US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo's recent remarks stem from his approach. On Wednesday, Pompeo said that US had interdicted a vessel off Yemen's coast on June 28th that was carrying Iranian arms to the Houthis. Tehran and Damascus have signed a new comprehensive military cooperation agreement to strengthen Syrian air defense systems. Iranian military's Chief of Staff Major General Hossein Bagheri and Deputy Commander-in-Chief of Syrian Forces Major General Ali Abdullah Ayoub signed the agreement. The Iranian state media says the two officials also discussed the situation in Syria and the withdrawal of the foreign forces. It quoted Bagheri as saying regional people and countries do not welcome the US presence. He also urged Turkey to settle issues with Syria through dialogue. For his part, criticizing Washington's sanctions, Ayoub said the US had been unable to bring Iran, Syria and the resistance front to their knees. The US has branded North Korea and Iran as rogue states which are conducting aggressive activities. Defense Secretary Mark Esper also named Russia and China as Iran and North Korea's near peers. In a video message, Esper praised the US military for deterring hostile actions of the four countries. He thanked the soldiers for their contribution to implementing the National Defense Strategy. This is the third time when the US Defense Chief has referred to American foes as rogue states in the last 8 months. Earlier, US Deputy Secretary of State Stephen Biegun visited South Korea amid stalled nuclear talks between Washington and Pyongyang. The US has criticized a UN finding that an American drone strike that killed a top Iranian general was unlawful. State Department spokesperson Morgan Ortagus said the UN report whitewashed Qasem Soleimani's notorious past. Ortega said it takes a special kind of intellectual dishonesty to issue a report condemning the US for acting in self-defense. She said this tendentious and tedious report undermines human rights by giving a pass to terrorists. Earlier this week, a UN Special Rapporteur, Agnes Callamard, said Soleimani's killing in January in Iraq violated the UN Charter. She called it an arbitrary killing and said the US provided no evidence that an imminent attack against its interest was being planned. Callamard will present her findings to the UN Security Council today. The UN Security Council has voted down a Russian draft resolution that sought to extend cross-border aid to Syria for 6 months through one border gate. The bid only garnered support from China, Vietnam and South Africa and Russia itself. The Russian resolution sought to limit the number of crossing points to just Bab el-Hawa. The US, France, the UK, Germany, Belgium, Estonia and Dominican Republic voted against the draft resolution. Tunisia, Niger, Indonesia and St. Vincent and the Grenadines abstained. Yesterday, Russia and China vetoed the UNSC resolution for extending humanitarian aid in Syria for a year. The more than 6-year-long aid operation is currently authorized until Friday. China has warned it will take further action in response to Australia's suspension of its extradition treaty with Hong Kong. This comes as Australia's Prime Minister Scott Morrison suspended the agreement and extended visas of Hong Kong citizens by 5 years. At a briefing, Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesman Zhao Lijian asked Canberra to change course and stop interfering in Beijing's affairs. Earlier, Morrison announced measures to assist Hong Kong citizens to start a new life in Australia. Morrison said there are 10,000 Hong Kong citizens in Australia on student visas or temporary work visas. He said these students will have the opportunity to apply for permanent residency. Meanwhile, New Zealand says it is also reviewing settings of its relationship with Hong Kong, which include extradition arrangements. China says both Washington and Beijing should explore ways for peaceful coexistence and release more positive energy. In a speech, China's Foreign Minister and State Councillor Wang Yi said the two countries can return to the right track despite unprecedented challenges. Wang said Washington's policy towards Beijing is based on strategic misjudgments that lack a factual basis. He said both superpowers should not seek to change each other and build a more objective mutual understanding. Washington and Beijing remain at loggerheads over a range of issues, including the COVID-19, trade talks, Hong Kong, and the South China Sea. More stories to follow right after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. In the U.S., a lawyer for one of the 4 police officers charged in the George Floyd killing case has asked to have his client's case dismissed. In court filings, Thomas Lane's lawyer, Earl Gray, says there is no probable cause to charge Lane based on the evidence and U.S. law. Gray filed transcripts from body camera footage of 2 junior officers, the other being J. Alexander Kyung. The transcripts show Floyd told officers he couldn't breathe more than 20 times, to which Chauvin replied, "It takes a heck of a lot of oxygen to talk." Meanwhile, prosecutors in Washington filed 3 felony charges against the man who ran over a Black Lives Matter protest in Seattle, killing 1. In response to the charges of vehicular homicide, vehicular assault, and reckless driving, the accused's lawyer said it was just a horrible, horrible accident. In Russia, security forces have detained the governor of the eastern region, accusing him of orchestrating the murder of entrepreneurs in 2004 and 5. In a statement, the investigative committee said Khabarovsk region's governor, Sergei Furgal, will be charged shortly. Investigators have also accused Furgal of attempted murder. If found guilty of all the charges, he can be jailed for life. Furgal, a member of the Liberal Democratic Party, became a governor in 2018 after defeating a rival from the ruling United Russia Party. Libya says it will not accept the UAE's presence in its political dialogues. In an address to the UN Security Council, Libyan envoy to the bloc, Tahir al-Sunni, said Abu Dhabi is involved in supporting the failed coup attempt in Libya. Al-Sunni said the UAE threatened international peace and security in several regions. He condemned threats by Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi to interfere in Libyan matters and arm the tribes there. He said Tripoli will face any assault with firm resolve. The Israeli army has arrested 2 leading members of Palestinian Hamas in the occupied West Bank. Hamas said Jamal al-Tawil and Hussein Abu Kawaik were arrested in Israeli army's raid on Ramallah and Al-Bira cities. The group said the forces took both the leaders to the investigation centers. Meanwhile, clashes erupted between dozens of Palestinians and the Israeli forces during the raids in Kalkilia, Jenin, and Hebron. Israeli army usually detains scores of Palestinians in the occupied West Bank, claiming they are wanted by security forces. The arrests come ahead of Israel's plans to annex parts of the occupied West Bank this month. Turkey has criticized the U.S. for including Greek Cyprus in its international military education and training program. In a statement, Foreign Ministry spokesperson Hulusi Akar said the initiatives will not lead to a secure environment on the island. Akar said the move will not help maintain peace and stability in the eastern Mediterranean. He said Ankara supports the approach of the Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus in the conflict. Earlier, U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo announced the inclusion of Green Cyprus in the military training program. The U.S. Congress ended a decades-long arms embargo on the island last year. Russia says it is concerned over U.S. withdrawal from the Open Skies Treaty and considers Washington's decision very counterproductive. It says the Russian Defense Ministry and other institutions will take all the necessary measures over the U.S. withdrawal. In a virtual conference of Center for the National Interest, Russia's ambassador Anatoly Antonov said after Washington's withdrawal, Moscow will have no way to know what is going on in the U.S. He said by quitting the treaty, the U.S. demonstrated the lack of political will to search for mutually acceptable solutions. But the envoy said the U.S. and Russia are not enemies and cannot afford not talking to each other. Earlier in May, President Donald Trump declared to withdraw from the Treaty on Open Skies. The agreement provides for inspection flights over member countries' territories to monitor military activities. The newly appointed Afghan Special Envoy for Pakistan, Mohammad Umar Daduzai, says his primary focus would be to re-establish strong ties with Pakistan. In an interview, Dadu say he would work for cementing Pak-Afghan bilateral ties in economic, social, political and other areas. He said Pakistan played a key role in the Afghan peace process. Recently, Pakistan also appointed its former ambassador to Kabul, Mohammad Sadiq, as a special envoy for Afghanistan. Pakistan is observing the 53rd death anniversary of Fatima Jinnah, popularly known as the Mother of the Nation. She was the sister of Pakistan's founder Muhammad Ali Jinnah and led a major political movement to pursue her brother's vision of a democratic country. Fatima Jinnah was a close associate and an advisor to her elder brother, who later became the first Governor General of Pakistan. She was a strong critic of the British rule in the Indian subcontinent. After independence, she co-founded the Pakistan Women's Association and played an important role in the settlement of the women migrants. Jinnah died in 1967 in Karachi. Nearly 500,000 people attended her funeral. Brazil's President Jair Bolsonaro has vetoed parts of a law aimed at protecting native communities against the COVID-19 pandemic. Bolsonaro rejected points that assured access to drinking water, more hospital beds and intensive care units for the indigenous people. He also dismissed the points allowing for the free distribution of food, hygiene and disinfection materials. The government justified the veto, saying the law will have a budgetary and financial impact which would be unconstitutional. The rights group Social Environmental Institute said the presidential vetoes were criminal. Meanwhile, Venezuela's President Nicolas Maduro slammed Bolsonaro's behavior after the Brazilian leader tested positive for COVID-19.
When we see Brazil's number of cases due to the irresponsibility and madness of Jair Bolsonaro, I see that Jair Bolsonaro is out of control. Yesterday, while he was giving statements to journalists saying that he was sick, he took off his face mask. The journalists sued him in court because journalists were covering the story. He is sick and he takes off his mask? How far can he go? What is Bolsonaro's limit?
Porque los periodistas estaban cubriendo su noticia, él está enfermo.
Italian surgeons have successfully separated 2-year-old conjoined twins with a rare congenital defect. It is the first time such an operation has been carried out in Italy. The girls, who belong to the Central African Republic, had their skulls fused back to back. Doctors said the sisters shared much of the cranium and vein system. Medics said this condition occurs around once in every 2 million births. The last of the 3 operations to separate the twins on 8th of June took 18 hours and involved 30 doctors and nurses. In a statement, the Gesso Pediatric Hospital said a month after the final separation, the twins are fine. Google has launched the world's first commercial high-speed internet using balloons to the Kenya villages. More about this unique service in this report.
Of balloons provides affordable 4G internet service in remote regions of Rift Valley. It's the first balloon-powered internet to launch in Africa and the first non-emergency commercial deployment in the world. The technology has been used before, but not commercially. The service is run by Loon, a unit of Google's parent Alphabet, and Telecom Kenya, the East African nation's third-largest telecom operator.
Loon is finally in Kenya. Kenya being the first country in the world to commercialize the technology. This is basically base stations up even beyond where the planes are.
The large balloons carry a solar panel and battery and float in the upper atmosphere, high above planes and weather. They also have software equipped with artificial intelligence to navigate the flight paths without much human intervention.
This will help me reach out to people even in the diaspora because it has really been hard due to poor network around here. We are sometimes left behind when it comes to communication. And you want to send some honey to people, but mode of communication becomes a challenge.
According to Loon, the airborne base stations have much wider coverage, about 100 times the area of a traditional cell phone tower.
UK Finance Minister Rishi Sunak turned his hand to waiting tables at a central London eatery. This was part of a $625 million discount scheme to boost spending at restaurants and pubs that have been crippled by COVID-19. This report will tell you more.
Britain's food service industry, which employed 1.8 million people before the coronavirus crisis, has suffered thousands of job cuts. Firms, including the owners of the Cafe Ritaza and Cafe Rogue chains, have announced layoffs. London has launched a new scheme, Eat Out to help food businesses.
This is the acute problem that we face, and this company has had 6,000 people furloughed. They've brought back 2,000 already. I want them to bring back all of the other 4,000 as well. They can only do that if people are in their restaurants eating, and that's why today we introduced the Eat Out to Help Out discount, which will mean that everyone for the month of August, if they go out for a meal Monday to Wednesday, will receive a 50% discount on that meal, up to £10 a head.
At a branch of the Wagamama restaurant chain on the South Bank in London, Finance Minister Rishi Sunak delivered meals to one of the few occupied tables. He laughed with diners as it became apparent he had brought them the wrong order. Sunak also announced a temporary cut in sales tax from 20% to 5% for eat-in or hot takeaway from restaurants, cafes, and pubs.
Not everyone will be able to return to the jobs that they had. They should also be able to prepare for a new future. But we want to reward and incentivize employers who do the right thing and can bring their employees back successfully from furlough, and they will be rewarded with a £1,000 bonus for every employee that they successfully bring back.
The country's hospitality sector has welcomed the announcement, but the people belonging to other parts of the economy, including the auto sector, said they had been left out.
Paris Fashion Week took place fully online for the first time due to the COVID-19 pandemic. In the absence of the runway, French designer Christophe Josse paraded his models in the city. What in this report?
Haute Couture Week features one-of-a-kind outfits stitched by hand, presented by a select club of designers. Christopher Josse was initially doubtful about the idea of a digital showcase. Like his peers, he created a film for this season's online-only format, prompted by the coronavirus restrictions. The runway a no-go, Josse turned to Paris as a backdrop. Models walked along the River Seine, across the Eiffel Tower in off-white couture, under the evening light.
The goal of our approach is to talk about what the fashion house of Christophe Josse is all about, with something timeless for whatever season, whatever month or year, something that is a bit unchanging and evolving, but with a certain longevity. All of this comes together quite harmoniously in the film, and that is what's interesting.
Josse often works with neutral tones like beige and creme as the canvas for intricate lace or embroidery work. This year's event has convinced him that a film was not a bad alternative to the catwalk show, and he might do it again.
Here, I find that the sum of the work done brings us a final product, where the lighting work, the choice of materials, and the view on each dress is much more precise, much more delicate and poetic. That is not there on the day of the runway show.
Josse's Haute Couture show had already been derailed last January due to massive transport strikes, and this time, he is unable to see his VIP clients from all over the world in person.
Well, Bali is hosting the first center to return captive and rescue dolphins to the wild. The founder of the Dolphin Project, the charity that runs the center, says this model can be replicated in other countries. More in this report.
Just a year ago, Rambo the dolphin was confined to a shallow chlorinated pool in an Indonesian hotel in the island of Bali, entertaining visitors from around the world by jumping through hoops. Now, the bottlenose dolphin, estimated to be about 15 years old, is swimming freely after being brought to what organizers say is the world's first permanent rehabilitation center. This is a project initiated by Bali's government and animal rights groups.
Well, it's very exciting. It's been 50 years in the making. It's the first dolphin sanctuary anywhere in the world. And it's a model. It can be duplicated. And we're trying to do that in Europe as well, in Italy and in Crete.
A 2019 report says more than 3,000 dolphins were in captivity in 336 entertainment venues globally as part of an industry generating up to $5.5 billion annually. Returning dolphins to the wild depends on their health and capability to catch prey and interact with other dolphins. One problem is that dolphins often switch off their sonar in captivity.
And once we will relocate them to be released, they will go to the area where they were originally captured, because we know where they were captured. in Central Java. So we aim to relocate them to their area that they know, where they grew up.
The Bali government hopes to emulate the dolphin project to save other species. For Rick O'Barry, who in the past trained dolphins used in the TV series Flipper, opening the sanctuary in Bali is another step in his goal to end captivity.
European markets edge higher as investor focus swings to the potential economic recovery and earnings season gets underway. The pan-European stock 600 climbed marginally, with tech stocks rising close to 2% to lead gains. London's FTSE lost fractionally after a promising start to the day, while France's CAC 40 has edged up in early trade. Germany's DAX is leading the gains with over 1%. Shares in the Asia-Pacific traded higher today as Chinese inflation data for June spurred investor hopes. Mainland Chinese stocks continue to lead gains among the region's major markets. And now the weather situation from around the globe. And that's all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus.News.